My family betrayed me on my birthday, and I spent years plotting my revenge. You won't believe what I did on Christmas Day. My name is Rebecca Williams, and I live in a penthouse overlooking the glittering skyline of New York City. To the outside world, I'm successful, powerful, and confident. I run my own business, Williams Enterprises, a marketing agency that's taken years to build. I've worked hard for everything I have, but despite the success, there's always been something missing, something I couldn't place: my family. I've always been the one who held everything together, organizing family dinners, sending birthday cards, and making sure we stayed close. The holidays were special to me, and I always made sure they were for my family too. But there was always an undercurrent of tension, especially with my brother, Chris. Chris had never really supported my success, and we'd never been the closest. He lived in Chicago, far enough away to avoid confrontation but close enough to show up when he needed something. I used to think it was just sibling rivalry, but after this year's Christmas celebration, I'd realize how wrong I was. As I set the table in my apartment, I was buzzing with excitement. The decorations were perfect, red and gold, lights twinkling like stars. My favorite candles were placed strategically around the room, their flickering light casting a soft glow that set the perfect atmosphere. I stood in the middle of the room for a moment, taking in the sight. I couldn't help but smile. Everything was in its place. But that smile faded when I looked at the clock. My family was late. It wasn't unusual for them to run behind, especially on Christmas, but tonight I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The more I waited, the more that gut feeling grew. I tried to calm myself down, maybe it was nothing. After all, my father, Tom Williams, was a busy man, and Chris, well, he was always last minute. But as the minutes passed, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something wasn't right. When they finally walked through the door, I forced a smile, pushing all my doubts aside. Dad, with his usual charisma, strode into the room, his designer suit a testament to his success in the business world. He was a man who didn't tolerate failure, and I'd spent my life trying to measure up to his standards. Chris followed behind him, looking disinterested, as usual, his eyes scanning the room like he'd seen it all before. He barely acknowledged me. I greeted them both, trying to mask the unease bubbling inside. I poured the wine and we settled into the dining room. As we sat around the table, the conversation started light, talking about the usual holiday stuff, catching up on work, the weather. But I could sense something in the air. A tension I couldn't place, something that felt like it was waiting to explode. The small talk grew quieter, the silence more awkward, and it wasn't long before I noticed it. My father and Chris were exchanging looks. There was something they weren't telling me. I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, the moment happened. The moment that would change everything. As I stood up to get the main course from the kitchen, I overheard something. My father's voice, low but clear, cut through the noise of the party. It wasn't meant for me to hear, but I heard it anyway. "It's done. We'll tell her after Christmas. She doesn't need to know until then." And then Chris, his voice tinged with annoyance, replied, "I'm not sure this is the right move, Dad. You really think she'll go along with it?" I froze in place. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened in, trying to make sense of the conversation. What were they talking about? What had they done? I had to know, but I couldn't just barge in. So I waited, my breath caught in my throat. "She'll understand," my father's voice was firm. "She'll see it's for the best. The new will is final." The blood drained from my face. A new will? What did he mean by that? I stood frozen, trying to piece it all together. My mind raced. My father was planning something behind my back, something I wasn't supposed to know. And Chris, my own brother, was in on it. But why? Why would they do this to me? I couldn't stay hidden any longer. I took a deep breath, put on my best everything's fine face, and walked back into the room. But the damage had already been done. The unease had settled in, and I knew I could never be the same again. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. My father and Chris pretended like everything was normal, but I could see the cracks. The little glances exchanged, the tension in their voices. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. When the guests finally left, I couldn't bring myself to confront them right away. I was too hurt, too confused. But I knew one thing for sure: I had to find out what was going on, and I needed to act fast. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I snuck into my father's study. His office was full of paperwork, old files, and half-empty whiskey glasses. I searched through the drawers, my hands shaking. Finally, I found what I was looking for, a folder labeled, "New Will Confidential." My breath caught as I opened it. The first page was dated just a month ago, and there it was, my name had been removed from the inheritance. I couldn't believe it. How could they do this to me? My father, who I had spent my entire life trying to make proud, had excluded me from everything. And Chris, my brother, had been part of it all along. I wasn't just betrayed, I was erased. I slammed the folder down on the desk. The betrayal was worse than anything I had ever imagined. But that was the moment I made my decision. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I would make them pay for what they had done. I would make sure they regretted ever thinking they could betray me like this. The plan began that night, and no one, not even my father or Chris, would see what was coming. But before I could strike, I needed to learn more. I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal ran, and how much I was willing to sacrifice to get my revenge. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our videos. The best is yet to come. After that night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the will, the words that had erased me from my family's future, kept replaying in my mind like a nightmare. I had always suspected something was off with my family, but I never imagined it would go this far. I never thought my father, the man who taught me everything about hard work and success, would stab me in the back like this. And Chris, my brother, the one person who I thought had my back. It turned out he had been plotting against me all along. I felt sick, betrayed, and confused. How could they do this to me? I stayed up all night, packing around my penthouse in the dark, my mind racing. I knew I had to confront them, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed more information. I needed to understand just how deep this betrayal ran, and I needed to know why. Why me? Why now? The next morning, I forced myself to go about my day as if nothing had happened. I went into work at Williams Enterprises, trying to focus on my clients and projects. But all I could think about was the will, the betrayal, my family. It was consuming me. Every email, every phone call felt distant and hollow. I couldn't shake the anger building inside of me. I wanted answers, and I would get them, no matter the cost. Around noon, I called Samantha, my best friend and lawyer. Samantha had always been there for me, even when the rest of my family couldn't be. She knew the ins and outs of my father's business dealings more than anyone else. We had been close for years, and I trusted her completely. I needed her help to unravel this mess. I needed to know what was really going on. "Sam, I need you to do something for me." My voice was tight, barely able to control the emotion bubbling inside. "I need you to look into Dad's finances, everything. And Chris, too. There's something I'm not seeing, and I need to know what's really going on." "Rebecca, slow down. What's going on?" Samantha's voice was laced with concern. "What did you find?" I told her everything. The will, the betrayal, my suspicions about Chris and Dad. I felt like I was finally letting it all out, the pain and frustration I had kept buried for so long. I was trembling as I spoke, the weight of it all crushing me. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not like this. "Okay, I'll dig into it. But you need to be careful, Rebecca. If they're hiding something, it's not going to be easy to uncover." Samantha's voice was calm, but I could hear the concern behind it. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure," I said, my jaw clenched with determination. "Do whatever it takes. I need to know everything." We hung up, and I immediately went to work. I started searching through my father's old files and documents, anything that could give me a clue. I knew my father's business inside and out, but there were always things he kept hidden from me, things that didn't make sense. I couldn't let that happen anymore. The hours passed, and I felt myself becoming more obsessed with finding the truth. Each file I opened seemed to lead to more questions, and every answer I found only made things more complicated. I was close, too close. But then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Samantha. "Rebecca, I found something. Meet me at my office in an hour." I didn't even think. I grabbed my coat, locked my office, and rushed out. My heart raced as I made my way to Samantha's office. What had she found? What was so important that she couldn't tell me over the phone? The anticipation was unbearable. When I arrived, Samantha was waiting for me, her expression serious. She motioned for me to sit down. I don't know what you're getting yourself into, Rebecca, but this is bigger than you think. She handed me a folder, and I opened it, my eyes scanning the contents. There were documents from my father's company, financial statements, bank transfers, and contracts. But it wasn't the financials that caught my eye, it was the names. These are Chris's accounts, I muttered under my breath. What the hell is going on here? Samantha looked at me with a grave expression. Chris has been siphoning money from the company for years. Her voice was steady, but I could see the shock in her eyes. And it looks like your father has been covering it up. My stomach dropped. Chris, the brother I had always tried to protect, had been stealing from our family. But that wasn't all. There were transactions linked to offshore accounts I didn't recognize. The more I looked, the more it became clear this wasn't just about money. This was about power. Chris had been playing a game of his own, and I was just a pawn. But there was more. I sifted through the documents, searching for something, anything that would give me more answers. And then I found it, another file buried deep in the folder, marked with a red, confidential stamp. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was a letter dated just 3 months ago, signed by both my father and Chris. The letter was a formal agreement between them. They were planning to cut me out of the family business entirely. They were using me, and I had been too blind to see it. It was worse than I thought. Samantha, this isn't just about the will. This is about everything. They've been planning to take everything from me. My voice trembled with fury as I stared at the paper in front of me. Samantha's face was pale, and she stood up, packing the room. Rebecca, I'm sorry, but this is much worse than we thought. They were going to destroy you. I felt the anger rising in me, bubbling over like a pot about to explode. I'll make them pay. The words slipped out of my mouth before I even realized it. I'll make them regret ever thinking they could get away with this. But as the words left my lips, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclaiming everything I had lost, the trust, the love, and the respect I had given so freely to a family that had never truly cared about me. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not this time. You need to be careful, Rebecca, Samantha warned, but I was already lost in the rush of anger and determination. You're stepping into dangerous territory. You don't know what they're capable of. I looked at her, my face hardening with resolve. I don't care anymore. They won't stop me. As I left Samantha's office that afternoon, I knew what I had to do. The truth had been uncovered, and the game had just begun. But as I stepped into the street, something tugged at the back of my mind. This wasn't just about getting back at them anymore. It was about something deeper, something that had been buried in the shadows of my family's history for years. I was ready to find out exactly how far they would go to protect their secrets. The city felt colder than usual as I stepped out of Samantha's office. Maybe it was the betrayal I'd just uncovered, or maybe it was the bitter realization that the family I had loved and trusted for so long had been nothing but a facade. Either way, something inside me had shifted. I was no longer the sister trying to keep the peace, the daughter desperate for her father's approval. No, now I was a woman who had been wronged, and I was going to make sure that everyone involved paid for it. I couldn't shake the documents Samantha had shown me. Chris had been siphoning money from the family business for years, funneling it into accounts I didn't even know existed. My father, who had always preached the importance of family above all else, had been complicit. And now, they both were in on something far worse than I had ever imagined. The worst part, it wasn't even about the money anymore. No, what hurt the most was the realization that they never saw me as an equal. To them, I was just a tool, a pawn to be manipulated and discarded when they saw fit. They didn't care about me, and as hard as it was to admit, they probably never had. But they were wrong. I wasn't weak. I wasn't going to be their victim. That night after I left Samantha's office, I didn't go home. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. So I went to the Mercer, a small but exclusive bar in the West Village. It wasn't my usual hangout, but tonight I needed distance. I needed to clear my head, think, and plan. A couple of drinks would do the trick. The bartender, a young guy with dark hair and a friendly smile, handed me a glass of red wine. I took a long sip, feeling the tension in my shoulders loosen just a little. The low hum of conversation and clinking glasses helped me forget the storm of anger swirling inside. But the calm didn't last long. As I sat there, scrolling through my phone, a text popped up on the screen. Samantha. Rebecca, there's more you need to know. I dug deeper into Chris's accounts. There are payments going to someone I didn't expect. My heart raced. Payments? Who else was involved in this? I stared at the message, my fingers itching to type back. Who? I could already feel the familiar weight of betrayals starting to settle in again. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Samantha. It's your mother. She's been involved in this for years, and I'm starting to think she's the one pulling the strings. My breath caught in my throat. My mother, the woman I had always seen as the moral compass of the family. The woman who had been the one to console me when things were tough. She was involved in this. The shock was almost too much to bear, but at the same time it made sense. My father and Chris couldn't have pulled this off alone. They needed someone with the power to cover their tracks. And my mother, Catherine Williams, the silent matriarch, was always the one who had all the answers. I stood up abruptly, my heart pounding. I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to confront her. I had to find out the truth. By the time I reached my penthouse, the weight of what I'd just learned was suffocating. My mother, the woman who had always played the role of the supportive, nurturing parent, had been orchestrating this betrayal from the shadows. All these years, I had believed that my family was above all the greed and lies. But it was a lie. My entire life had been one big, tangled web of deceit, and my mother was at the heart of it. I paced back and forth in the living room, my mind spinning. I had no idea how to confront her. I had spent my entire life trying to make her proud, always doing what was expected of me. But now I wasn't the dutiful daughter anymore. I was someone who had been betrayed, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Chris. I need to talk. Come to the office tomorrow. I rolled my eyes. He had no idea what was coming. Did he think I would just forgive him? Did he think I'd let him off the hook? The arrogance of it all made my blood boil. But I had to admit I was curious. What was he planning? What did he think he could say to make this all go away? I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. If I was going to take back control, I needed to play the game. And playing this game meant getting answers from both Chris and my mother. So I decided to meet him the next day, at his office. The next morning, I put on my best suit, the one that made me feel in control. I needed to look the part. I wasn't just going to walk into that office as a victim. I was walking in as a woman who knew exactly what was going on. And I wasn't going to let Chris or anyone else try to manipulate me again. His office was sleek, modern, and far too clean for my liking. It was the perfect representation of Chris, cold, calculated, and always put together. When I walked in, he was sitting behind his desk, his phone in hand, looking at me like he hadn't seen me in years. Rebecca, good to see you. He stood up, flashing that charming smile he always used when he was trying to convince people that he was the good guy. You look well. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Cut the crap, Chris. I know everything. His smile faltered for just a second, and I saw a flash of panic in his eyes before he regained his composure. What are you talking about? I pulled the documents from my bag, everything Samantha had uncovered about his accounts, the payments to the offshore accounts, the hidden assets. I slammed the folder down on his desk and watched as he paled. I know about the money, the accounts, the lies, and I know you've been working with Dad and Mom to keep me out of everything. I leaned in, my voice low and steady. You thought I wouldn't find out, but I did. Chris's face went hard. You don't know what you're talking about. He stood up, packing now. This is business, Rebecca. You wouldn't understand. I shook my head. No, I understand perfectly. You've been lying to me for years, and now I'm going to make you pay for it. There was a long silence. I could feel the tension in the room thickening. Chris didn't say anything for a moment, just stood there, looking at me like he was weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. You don't have to do this. We're family. I was just trying to protect you. I laughed bitterly. Protect me? You were protecting yourself, Chris, and you were using me as a pawn in your game. I'm done being your pawn. He looked at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then, just as I thought the conversation was over, he said something I never expected. You don't know the full story, Rebecca. You think you do, but there's more. Much more. The truth was starting to unravel faster than I could keep up. The weight of everything I had discovered, about Chris, my father, and my mother, felt like it was crushing me. The family I had always tried so hard to please, to love, was nothing more than a house of cards, and I had just pulled the first one out. I knew now that nothing, and no one, could be trusted. But what hurt the most? The realization that the people I thought I knew best were playing a game that I was no longer part of. After my tense conversation with Chris, I couldn't help but feel a sickening mix of betrayal and anger. He had tried to throw me off, pretending to be the caring brother, the one who wanted to protect me. But I saw through it. He was desperate, trying to hold onto the control he thought he had over me. I knew the game was just beginning. But as much as I wanted to confront him again, as much as I wanted to scream at him for everything he had done, there was one thing I had to do first. I had to find out more. I needed to know what was really happening behind the scenes. There was something else, something bigger, that I still hadn't uncovered. That's when I remembered the encrypted file I had found on my father's laptop. Samantha had warned me about how deep the deception ran, but I hadn't fully understood it until now. Chris had been hiding money, but the offshore accounts, the hidden assets, none of it made sense unless there was a larger plan at work. I needed to know exactly what that plan was, and the only way to get the full picture was to get to the heart of my father's operation. It was risky, but I had no other choice. That afternoon, I went to my father's office. I told myself I was just going for a routine visit, but we both knew it was anything but. I was already prepared for the confrontation. I knew that once I started digging, there would be no turning back. His office was pristine, just like everything else in his world. The dark mahogany desk, the sleek leather chairs, the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a perfect view of the city. He had always been proud of the empire he built, and to him, it was all about appearances. But today, I didn't care about his empire. I cared about the truth. He was sitting behind his desk, as usual, when I walked in. His eyes flicked up to me, his face giving away nothing. "Rebecca!" His voice was calm, controlled, but I could hear the edge in it. He always knew when I was up to something. "What brings you here today?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need to talk to you, Dad." I stood tall, refusing to let him see how much this was hurting me. "I know what you've been hiding." His eyebrows raised, but there was no surprise in his eyes, only the same cold detachment I had grown used to. "What exactly are you talking about?" he asked, his tone still measured. I dropped the folder onto his desk. The same one Samantha had helped me put together, filled with all the incriminating documents I had found. The offshore accounts, the illegal transactions, the money Chris had been siphoning, everything was in that folder. He didn't flinch as he looked at it. He didn't even hesitate. He just stared at the papers, his fingers tapping lightly on the desk. It was as if he was waiting for me to make my next move, to give him some excuse to dismiss me. "I know about the will. I know about the money you've been hiding." My voice was firm, but there was a knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. "I know you've been plotting with Chris to cut me out of everything, and I know you've been lying to me for years." My father's face remained unchanged, but I saw the smallest flicker in his eyes. It was only for a second, but it was enough. He was cornered, and that moment of vulnerability only made me angrier. "You've always made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I had to earn your love and respect." My voice cracked, but I quickly recovered. "But now I know the truth. I was never part of the plan. You never saw me as family." His gaze softened just a little, but it was a trick. He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time I saw him hesitate. "Rebecca, you don't understand. This isn't what you think." I crossed my arms, not backing down. "Then explain it to me." I took a step forward, my eyes narrowing. "Tell me why you and Chris thought it was okay to hide everything from me, to lie to me about the family business, the inheritance, everything." His lips tightened, and for a moment I thought he was going to throw me out of his office. But then, to my surprise, he sighed deeply, leaning forward. It's not about the money, Rebecca. It never was. He ran his hand through his graying hair. I did what I thought was best, for the family, for everyone. I felt my anger rising again. Best for who, Dad? You, Chris. I slammed my hand on the desk, causing him to flinch. What about me? Was I not part of this family? There was a long silence. He didn't answer right away, and that only made the tension worse. I could feel my pulse racing, the anger building inside of me, but I couldn't let it consume me. I had to stay focused. This wasn't just about getting back at him. It was about uncovering the full extent of their betrayal. Finally, he spoke. There's a lot you don't know, Rebecca. Things that have been kept from you for a reason. I never wanted you to be involved in this mess. He stood up and walked over to the window, looking out over the city. You were always my legacy. I wanted you to inherit something worth inheriting. I didn't understand what he meant, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. My father's words felt hollow. They didn't fit with what I had uncovered. He was trying to make it seem like he had been protecting me, but I could see the lies written all over his face. I don't want your legacy, Dad. The words slipped out before I could stop them. I want the truth. There was a pause before he spoke again. You've always wanted the truth, haven't you? He turned to face me, his eyes narrowing. But the truth, Rebecca, is something you may not be ready for. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. I could feel the weight of what he was about to say hanging in the air. I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever came next, but I was done being in the dark. What are you talking about? My voice trembled, but I didn't care anymore. I needed answers. My father took a step closer to me. If you want the truth, Rebecca, you're going to have to dig deeper than you've ever dug before. I felt like I was walking on the edge of a cliff, my every step inching closer to a point of no return. Each moment, each revelation about my father and Chris only dug the hole deeper. The twisted web of deceit I had uncovered in my family was far more complex than I ever imagined. But the truth was slowly, painfully, starting to surface, and I wasn't going to stop until I knew everything. After the conversation with my father in his office, I couldn't get the words out of my head. If you want the truth, you're going to have to dig deeper than you've ever dug before. It was a warning, but it felt more like a challenge. Was he taunting me? Or was he trying to prepare me for something I wasn't ready to hear? Whatever it was, I knew one thing for sure. It was time to take control of the situation. The next day, I went to visit Samantha again. I had to dig deeper, and I couldn't do it alone. My mind was still spinning from the revelations, but I knew there was more. There had to be. Chris was hiding something, and if my father was involved, the stakes were higher than I had ever anticipated. When I walked into Samantha's office, she was already waiting for me. She knew the urgency in my voice when I called. I didn't need to explain. I could see the concern on her face as soon as I sat down across from her. I need your help again, Sam. My voice was low, steady. There's more, I can feel it. I know Chris is hiding something else, something bigger. Samantha leaned forward, her eyes narrowing in focus. Rebecca, you need to be careful. You're going down a dangerous path. You don't know what they're capable of. I wasn't scared anymore. I had nothing to lose. I've come this far, I'm not stopping now. Samantha hesitated for a moment, but she reached for her laptop. She started typing furiously, pulling up bank statements, legal documents, anything that could give us more insight into my father's shady dealings. As she worked, I sat back, my mind racing. How much longer could this go on? What was I going to find? Then Samantha froze. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, her expression unreadable. Rebecca, she trailed off, her voice tight. I think I've found something you need to see. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? Samantha turned the screen towards me, and my breath caught in my throat. It was an old document, a legal agreement that had been signed by both my father and Chris. The date on it was recent, just a few months ago. It was a contract between them and another person, someone I didn't recognize. But what caught my attention was the amount of money involved, millions. More money than I ever imagined my father or Chris would have access to. What is this? I whispered, feeling my pulse race. Samantha's fingers hovered over the screen, scrolling down. It's a partnership agreement. They've been hiding assets, making secret deals with someone in another country. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. And I think I know who it is. I felt the ground slip out from under me. I leaned forward, my voice shaking. Who? Samantha typed a name into the search bar. It was a name I hadn't heard in years, Victor Daniels, a name that had once been tied to my father's rise to power in the business world. He had been a mentor to my father, a trusted partner, but I had never known about any of these secret deals. Victor Daniels, I muttered under my breath. Why would they be working with him? Samantha looked at me, her eyes dark with concern. You need to understand, Rebecca. Victor Daniels is dangerous. He's been involved in illegal activities for years. Smuggling, money laundering, you name it. Your father and Chris have been in business with him, and now, I think it's all coming to a head. I could feel the walls closing in around me. Everything I thought I knew about my family, the values they had preached to me, the principles I had tried to live by, was a lie. They had been working with criminals, hiding money, and now they were about to pay the price. And I was right in the middle of it. What do we do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The gravity of the situation was weighing down on me. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I couldn't let my family destroy themselves, especially not when I had a chance to stop it. Samantha took a deep breath. I think we need to confront them. The confrontation was inevitable. I knew I couldn't keep hiding from the truth. My father and Chris had to answer for what they had done. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, I had to face them, and I had to do it now. That night, I called Chris. The moment he picked up, I felt a chill run down my spine. He wasn't expecting me to call, not after everything that had happened. I had expected him to be angry, to try to deflect, but instead, his voice was strangely calm. Rebecca, what's going on? He asked, his tone guarded. I took a deep breath, holding my ground. I know everything, Chris. I know about the offshore accounts, the secret deals. I know about Victor Daniels. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. And then, just as I thought he was about to speak, he hung up. I stared at my phone in disbelief. He hadn't even tried to deny it. He knew I had him cornered. I knew then that the time had come. I couldn't let this go on any longer. I had to go straight to the source. The next morning, I went to my father's office. This time, there would be no more pretending. No more games. I walked in, my mind set on one thing, the truth. My father was sitting at his desk when I walked in. He didn't even look up. Rebecca! He said it like we were just having another ordinary conversation. What's on your mind? I slammed the documents down onto his desk. The ones I had gathered with Samantha's help. The ones that laid out everything, every secret, every betrayal. My father looked at them and then at me. The look in his eyes was cold, calculated. He wasn't afraid. You've been hiding this from me for years, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. And now I'm done. I'm done being your pawn, done being your little secret. He didn't flinch. I did what I had to do, Rebecca, for the family. His voice was firm, like he was justifying his actions, but I wasn't buying it anymore. You were never part of the plan. The words stung, but I was done crying over it. I was done being the daughter he never truly cared for. You're right about one thing, Dad. I was never part of the plan. I leaned in closer, locking eyes with him. But I'm about to make a new one, and this time I'm in charge. What do you think? It's strange, isn't it? How a lifetime of trust, love, and family can unravel in the span of a few days. One moment, you're sitting at the table with the people you love, believing in the bonds that have held you together for years. The next, you're sitting across from the same people you've shared so much with, and realizing that nothing was ever real. I thought I knew my family. I thought I could trust them. But I was wrong. And now, I was ready to make them pay for every lie, every betrayal. After confronting my father in his office, I thought I had hit the peak. I thought I had uncovered every secret. But there was something I wasn't prepared for, a truth so deep, so buried, that even my father couldn't hide it anymore. As much as I wanted to storm out of that office, to leave him there to stew in his lies, something inside me held me back. This wasn't just about getting back at him anymore. This was about uncovering the full extent of the deception and putting an end to it. I looked at my father, sitting there like he hadn't just shattered everything I believed about him, about us. His expression was unreadable, his gaze steady, as if he were waiting for me to break. But I wasn't going to break. I wasn't going to let him have that power over me anymore. "You've always been good at pretending, haven't you?" I said, the words sharp as a knife. Pretending to be the family man, the successful businessman, the loving father. But it was all a lie. His jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, regret. It was gone in a flash, replaced by the coldness I had come to expect from him. He wasn't going to give me the satisfaction of seeing him squirm. But I wasn't looking for satisfaction anymore. I was looking for the truth. "What else are you hiding, Dad?" I pressed, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. "You've already shown me who you really are, but there's something else, something I'm missing. What aren't you telling me?" For the first time in years, my father hesitated. He opened his mouth to speak, but closed it again, as if the words he wanted to say were caught in his throat. That hesitation was the final crack in the facade he had built for decades. "You think this is about money, don't you?" he said finally, his voice quieter than usual. "That's what you think all this is about, but it's not. It never was." My heart pounded in my chest. The truth was coming out, slowly, painfully. I leaned in closer, my breath steady despite the intensity of the moment. "Then what is it about, Dad? What could possibly be worth all the lies, all the betrayal?" His eyes flicked to the door, almost as if he was weighing whether to tell me what he knew. "You really want to know?" he asked, his voice low, filled with something that bordered on regret, fear. I nodded. I needed to know. I had come too far to back down now. "It's about control, Rebecca. It always has been." His voice was barely a whisper, but the words hit me like a slap. "The business, the inheritance, it's all part of a bigger plan. You were never supposed to be part of it." I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice shaking, the pieces of the puzzle finally starting to fall into place. "You did all of this to control me, to keep me from the inheritance. Why?" My father finally stood up, packing the room, his back turned to me. "You're not ready to hear this, Rebecca, but I'm going to tell you anyway." He turned to face me, his expression now a mask of cold indifference. "The business, it's not just about money, it's about legacy. The legacy I've spent my whole life building. Chris was always the one who was going to carry it on, but you were never meant to be part of it." A chill ran down my spine. Chris, my brother, the one who had been part of this all along. The one I had always tried to protect, the one who I thought was just jealous of me. But he wasn't just jealous. He had been complicit in everything. He had been the one pulling the strings alongside my father, and now I understood the full extent of their plan. "This was never about you being a part of the family legacy, Rebecca. It was always about keeping you out of it." My father's words hit me like a tidal wave. "You were never meant to inherit anything, not the company, not the money, nothing." I couldn't breathe. Everything I had ever worked for, everything I had ever believed about my place in this family, had been a lie. "What about Mom?" I managed to choke out, the words thick with emotion. "Where does she fit into all of this?" My father's face darkened. He didn't say anything for a long time, and just when I thought he wouldn't answer, he spoke. "Your mother, she's always been the one behind all of this, the one pulling the strings. I didn't want you to know. She didn't want you to know." His voice was filled with bitterness. "She's the one who convinced me to cut you out of the will. She knew you would never accept it, but she insisted it had to be done." My mind spun. My mother, the woman I had trusted more than anyone, the woman who had always been my rock, she was in on this. She had been planning this betrayal all along, just like Chris and my father. It was too much. I couldn't process it. "You're lying. You're both lying to me." I felt the tears stinging my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. I wasn't going to let him see me break, not after everything. "This isn't just about the company, is it? There's something more." My father's eyes hardened. "You don't understand, Rebecca. You were never supposed to find out. You were supposed to stay in the dark, just like everyone else." That was when I realized this wasn't just about revenge. This was about something far deeper. There was a history here, a history I hadn't known about. Something my mother and father had been hiding from me for years. It was bigger than money. It was bigger than legacy. It was about power, and I had never been part of their plan. And just like that, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let this be the end of my story. The final betrayal wasn't just about money or power. It was about taking control of my own life, my own future. And just like that, everything I knew about my family was shattered. But the worst part, I'm just getting started. The deeper I dig, the more secrets I uncover, secrets that could destroy everything they've worked for. But can I really make them pay for what they've done to me? Or will the cost of revenge be higher than I ever imagined? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next twist in this insane journey. You won't believe what happens next.